Welcome to the lesson on application questions. These are actually my favourite questions on the whole specification. Now, typically students don't like application questions, but actually I love them. And I think once students do understand how to answer them, so hopefully that'll be you shortly, they learn to love them too and realise they're really quick ways to get extra marks without knowing any extra information. So these are questions that you're required to apply your knowledge to a short STEM. So by this, I mean a short scenario, normally involving one or more people. And in these questions, if you do not apply your answer, you will be capped at approximately half marks. So if you don't know how to answer them properly or you don't apply them to the STEM, then they are a quick way for you to lose marks. One of the key pieces of advice I give to people studying AQA A-level psychology is for application questions, stick to the following structure. So I want you to make sure that you do one sentence of knowledge and then you full stop, and then you do a sentence of application applying your previous knowledge and then full stop. There are a few exceptions to this rule, perhaps just 4 on the whole course, and I'll discuss these later on. So always stick to AO1, AO2. Now, however many marks are available, you need to half it. So for example, if the question was worth 6, you half it, that's 3, and that's how many AO1 points you need to make. So if a question was worth 6 marks, you do AO1, AO2, AO1, AO2, AO1, AO2, and if you stick to that structure, you will not go far wrong. Okay, so let's take a look at this first example from memory. Sherry can remember her 10th birthday party when she was on holiday in France. During this holiday, her father taught her how to swim. Although it took her time to learn, she barely has to think about how to swim now. Sherry can also remember the French words for the food she ate while in France, even though she did not speak any French before the holiday. With reference to Sherry's experiences, explain 3 different types of long-term memory, and this is worth 6 marks. So, the STEM is referring to Sherry and her experiences. This you will need to include in your answer. It's worth 6 marks, so we half that, so I know I need 3 AO1 marks. And because it's an application question, I need to do AO1, AO2, AO1, AO2, AO1, AO2. So what I'd like you to have a think about now is you could pause the video and you can either have a think about how you would answer this question, or you can have a go at writing an answer. And on the next slide, we'll talk through the answer together. So hopefully you're able to identify that the 3 types of long-term memory are episodic, procedural and semantic. So to get your marks for this, you'd be getting 3 marks for defining each type of long-term memory, and then your other 3 marks would be from applying those to the STEM. So we'll have a look at this model answer together. Episodic memories are a type of long-term memory associated with an individual's personal subjective experience. That's just a generic knowledge mark. And then Sherry's memory of her 10th birthday party is an episodic memory, as it's a personal event and it's also time stamped. So there is justification for why that memory is an episodic memory. Next, procedural memories are those associated with carrying out complex motor skills, knowledge mark. Learning to swim is an example of a procedural memory, as it is a motor-based skill and it does not require conscious recall. Therefore, Sherry barely needs to think about it now. So again, you can see there is a little bit more information justifying why this type of memory is procedural, rather than just saying learning to swim is a procedural memory, full stop. Finally, semantic memories are those associated with knowledge and facts about the world. There's the AO1 mark. And then Sherry learning the French words for the food she ate is an example, as she consciously learnt these new words which increased her knowledge. And that's the final AO2 mark. So as you can see here, there's a very rigid structure of AO1, AO2, AO1, AO2, AO1, AO2. Okay, so we've got a second example here from attachment. So proud father Abdul was talking to his friend as they were both watching Abdul's wife Tasneem interacting with their baby daughter Aisha. It's amazing really, said Abdul. Tasneem smiles, Aisha smiles back. Tasneem moves her head, Aisha moves hers perfectly in time with each other. Yes, agreed the friend. It's almost as if they're one person. So again, there's a STEM, so I know it's an application question. And it says, with reference to Abdul's conversation with his friend, outline 2 features of caregiver-infant interaction. So here you'd be needing to think about what are your 2 AO1 key terms that you need to define, and then you'd need to be thinking where do these show up in the STEM. So I'd encourage you just to pause the video and have a think. Okay, so hopefully you've identified that the two key terms you needed were reciprocity and interaction or synchrony. In the model answer here, they have both been defined and then linked back to the stem. So I'll give you some time to pause the video and just have a read through of this answer and compare it to your own. Okay, so a third example here from psychopathology. Stan has a phobia of lifts. He was stuck for 3 hours in a broken lift when he was young. He feels sick when he sees a lift, and now he cannot use escalators or ride on roller coasters in case they break down. He feels calm when he uses the stairs. So how could Stan's phobia be explained using the two-process model? Again, this is going to be AO1, AO2, AO1, AO2. So please just pause the video and have a think about what would be your knowledge and your application marks here. So hopefully you've identified that the two-process model is referring to classical conditioning explaining the initiation of the phobia and then operant conditioning explaining the maintenance of the phobia. So you'd need one sentence about classical conditioning in the context of phobias, and then you'd need to link that to the stem, and then you'd need to do the same for operant conditioning about the maintenance, and then link that to the stem. So again, you can pause the video here and compare the model answer to your own. Now, earlier on during this lesson, I did mention there were a few exceptions. So there are a few exceptions to the AO1, AO2 rule on the course. And these areas are normally where there's too much theory to do separate AO1 and AO2. So therefore you do need to combine your AO1 and your AO2 together. In these instances, you would just apply your answers from the start. So don't bother separating the AO1 and AO2 into different sentences. You just keep them all contextualized to the stem. So these topics include the following. If you get a question on the fight or flight response, which is the SAM pathway in biopsych, this process is around 6 stages long. So therefore, typically you need to apply that straight away. A second one is mediational processes. You've got 4 mediational processes. Quite commonly, this question would be out of 4 marks. So again, you just apply your answers straight away. The other one is social change through minority influence, which is your one, if you've learned it, is don't climb down a steep slope. If that doesn't mean anything to you, don't worry. But again, there are 6 stages to this, so it would take you too long to do separate AO1 and AO2. And then the last one is systematic desensitization. Again, depending on how you separate this, there's 4 or 5 different points to this process. So there is too much information to separate it into AO1 and AO2. Again, this is the time in the video where it's giving you time to practice. So there are several questions and you'll get most out of this lesson if you stop and pause the video and actually have a go at answering the questions. You don't need to do them all in one go. You could do it bit by bit, but I would make sure that you have a go before checking out the answers. So just pause the video here and have a go at answering this question. Okay, so here is the mark scheme. There is reference to having to rehearse the information to keep information in short-term memory and then transfer it to long-term memory. And then you need to say why Jamie was unable to do this. And then the second AO1 point I would have mentioned is the capacity of the short-term memory being 7 plus or minus 2, and then reference to Jamie phoning the doctors and the doctor's number likely being longer than 7 or 9 digits if he's phoning a landline. Okay, so next practice question is from psychopathology. So have a read through the stem and have a go at answering this question. Remember that AO1 and that AO2 structure. And here's the mark scheme. So have a look and compare to your answer. Make sure you separated your AO1 and your AO2. You should just have 4 sentences and you can have a look at the mark scheme to mark yourself out of 4. Okay, so just quickly before you have a go at this question, it's an application question because it's talking about Sarah and a fear of cats. And it's about systematic desensitization. So does this question follow the normal AO1, AO2 structure, or is this one that has the exception? So it may be a leading question. Just have a think about that and then think about how you might answer this question differently to the previous couple of questions. Hopefully you've identified this was one of the exceptions to the rules, so you would have gone straight in with talking about Sarah and her fear of cats. So just have a look at your answer and compare it to the mark scheme to give yourself a mark out of 4. Okay, so here's another example from approaches. It's quite a chunky stem and it's worth 6 marks. So before you start writing, just think about how many AO1 points do you need to make and which key terms are you going to use for each of your AO1 points. With social learning theory, students sometimes kind of put everything all together in one sentence. I'd advise you to keep your key terms separate into those different AO1 points. Okay, so if we're here from the mark scheme, you can see that some of the AO1 content may have been about learning through observation, imitation, modelling, identification, and vicarious reinforcement. So if you have defined any of those key terms, they're your AO1 marks, and then contextualising each one of those to the STEM would be how you get your other 3 marks. So again, look at your answer and give yourself a mark out of 6. So we've come to the end of the lesson on application questions, and I hope you have A, enjoyed it, and B, you feel much more confident now on answering those application questions. It's a thing in my classroom, AO1, AO2, AO1, AO2, we do it all the time. But even though when I've been teaching students for 2 years and I see them for 3 hours a week, students will still forget to do this. So if you do forget it, you're not alone. But I would just say the more practice you do, the better you'll get. And for more practice, you can download past paper questions, mark schemes, and examiners reports for free from the AQA website.